Fire erupts in displaced camp in Hodeidah and causes serious damage. An Omani delegation arrives in Sana'a to discuss with the Houthis ways to revive the truce. Houthi militia imposes extra restrictions on women in the areas under their control. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. A fire broke out in the Ata camp for the displaced east of Al Khawkha district, south of Al Hodeidah Governorate. The correspondent of Yemen Today channel reported that the fire destroyed 3 homes for displaced families, as the fire destroyed all the food and shelter inside the tents. The reporter confirmed that 7 displaced families were affected by the fire, and about 85 families from the city of Hodeidah live in the camp who were displaced by the Houthi militia and forced their displacement. A delegation from Oman arrived in Sana'a to hold talks with high-ranking members of the Houthi rebels on extending the UN-brokered nationwide ceasefire in Yemen. The talks will focus on initiatives and proposals that were put forward during negotiations with representatives from Saudi Arabia and international delegates. Once progress is made with regard to the resumption of salary payments to all civil servants and the opening of airports and ports, other issues could be included in peace talks as well. They pointed out. More is in the following report.
In a new attempt to reach peace in Yemen, Oman is deploying new effort to prevent the situation from spinning out of control after the end of the United Nations arranged ceasefire last October. Political sources in Yemen said an Omani delegation arrived Wednesday in Sana'a accompanied by the Houthi negotiating team in Muscat after talks between the Saudi-led Arab coalition and the internationally recognized Yemeni government on the one hand and the Iran-backed Houthis on the other hit a dead end. The sources indicated that Houthi intransigence threatens a fragile truce which officially ended in early October as international and United Nations efforts failed to extend the ceasefire. The impasse, which hindered the extension of the truce, came as a result of the Houthis putting forward more prohibitive demands, including the sharing of oil and gas revenues in the areas controlled by the government and the payment of salaries to the group's fighter from the government. The Houthi rebels have also recently escalated their threats in an attempt to put pressure on their adversaries and the international community. Analysts believe the ceasefire was only able to hold until now because of the high degree of self-restraint exercised by the government. In the past few days, Houthi political and military officials have taken turns issuing threats to resume military attacks on the economic interests of the Arab coalition countries, so as to block international shipping waterways in the Red Sea and to disrupt global energy supplies.
The International Committee of the Red Cross said that it had visited this year more than 3,400 Yemeni war prisoners detained in both Yemen and Saudi Arabia. More is in the following report.
The Red Cross said that it had conducted rare visits to thousands of prisoners on both sides of Yemen's 8-year civil war, a step that could pave the way for an exchange of detainees between the rival parties. The Associated Press member of the Red Cross had seen more than 3,400 individuals to a facility in Saudi Arabia in December and a separate trip to Yemen's capital Sana'a in October. An official said members of the organization had been allowed access to some of the most secret and sensitive places in each country and will be able to inform many detainees' loved ones of their whereabouts. It means the authorities accept our presence and what comes with our presence, which is the capacity to repeat the visits, the fact that we will inform the families. The conflict has become one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, killing more than 150,000 people, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. Neither side had released the number of conflict-related prisoners it holds, but tens of thousands are estimated to have been held over the course of the war, many in harsh conditions. The last mass swap took place in 2020 and overseen by the Red Cross, so more than 1,000 detainees returned home. in what was hailed as a significant step towards peace. According to a 2018 agreement in Stockholm, the warring sides agreed to swap over 15,000 prisoners, though it's unclear how many have so far walked free. The prison visits would bolster confidence-building measures between the two sides of the conflict, but that it was also a sign of hope to those who remain jailed in either side of the war's front lines. The ICRC awaits the close of political negotiations towards the release, transfer and deportation of all conflict-related detainees so they can be reunioned with their families after years of separation. The ICRC, as the Red Cross is known internationally, plays an often confidential role to check on prisoners of war and regularly oversees exchanges in conflicts around the world. The group thanked both sides in Yemen for cooperating in allowing access to detainees, but urged them to return to peace talks.
A number of Houthi militia were killed and others were wounded by government forces fire in the Dola Governorate. A field source added that the government forces targeted a group of Houthi militia members who were trying to advance towards positions in Maurice front. The source confirmed that the government forces thwarted the militia's attempt and forced it to retreat after inflicting casualties and destroying 2 vehicles.
Yemen. The worst famine the world has seen in 100 years.
Right now, over 8 million people are facing starvation. Since the beginning of the war, 85,000 children have died due to the lack of food.
We cannot allow this to continue. The Yemeni people can't wait.
In a virtual meeting chaired by President Rashad Al-Alimi, the PLC renewed its commitment to continuing to pay the salaries of employees. The Council stressed the importance of mobilizing all resources and energies to thwart the Houthi terrorist plans, which aim to stop the wheel of economic and service reforms in the liberated governorates. The terrorist Houthi militia began imposing what it called a code of professional conduct on public university employees in the areas under its control. Since Tuesday, the militia launched the application of the code on Damar University employees amid the state of rejection of this procedure, which the militia resorted to applying it by force and threatened those who refused to sign with penalties, imprisonment, and prosecution. The rebels are adding to those of women in Yemen by imposing more restrictions on them. The following report has more details.
Residents and activists claim that the Iran-backed Houthis, who have governed swaths of Yemen since capturing the capital Sana'a in 2014, have increased travel restrictions on women in the last 8 months. Yemeni society, although very conservative, has long allowed for individual liberties. However, this is changing under the Houthi movement, which was created with the goal of establishing a theocracy. The Houthis have tightened restrictions on women traveling without a mahram or a male relative even within the nation. Earlier this year, Houthi police women who call themselves Zainabiyat arrested scores of women for shopping without a male guardian in the northern city of Sada, the movement's heartland. The Iran-backed Houthis banned women from shopping without a mahram, asked women to adhere to Islamic dress codes, and limited women's shopping options in the city. To enforce the restrictions, scores of all-female morality police officers were observed looking for offenders in Sada back in Ramadan, when streets were packed with shoppers. Dozens of unescorted women were temporarily held by the Houthi police. The Houthis have detained scores of women for breaking Islamic dress regulations, prohibited wedding music, and arrested singers and artists who defied the ban. Women are not permitted to go alone after dark in Sada or certain small towns, even in medical crises. Female freedom restrictions, similar to those imposed by the hardline Taliban in Afghanistan, are not part of Yemeni legislation and are imposed arbitrarily by rebel commands. During the summer, the Houthis closed swimming pools, fitness centers, and other enterprises catering primarily to women as part of their efforts to Talibanize Sana'a. However, the campaign is not limited to civilians. Following oppressive limitations on Yemeni female relief workers, the UN Refugee Agency accused authorities in northern Yemen of Talibanization. According to the UNHCR, the imposed restrictions hamper access to the female half of communities. Following 7 years of horrific fighting, the problem has hindered humanitarian relief operations for more than 24 million people in need of assistance. This comprises millions of internally displaced people, as well as 97,000 refugees from other nations who have temporarily relocated to Yemen. The constraints exacerbate already challenging conditions for the millions in need of assistance, at a time when international donors have mostly abandoned Yemen.
A number of shoppers were injured by Houthi gunmen in a popular market in the Yemeni capital Sana'a after they refused to pay financial levies. This comes one day after a similar campaign carried out by the militia in the city of Rada in Al Bayda Governorate, killing and injuring 4 civilians. Coming next. High prices prevent Yemenis from buying winter clothing.
أنا خارج ألعب جهة أصحابي وهو الرموا علينا إن إحنا لو نرموا قعلي أصحابي صاروا يدعوا أصحاب المخيم بزين يصرحوا زينا. صعب إن معي شيء رجل ما أقدرش ألعب مع أصحابي أو قد آخر ألعب بالليل.
أصلاً الولد ما لعب ما بدهم أي حاجة، ولما يشوف أصحابه يلعبوا هما برجل واحدة يتعقد الولد الحركات والصوت. هذا أثر علينا كلنا، الوالدة والوالد.
كنت قاعدة نروح المصيف، كنت ألعب كورة وأجري برجلي وألعب مع أصحابي، بعدين أبي صغير والآن ما أقدرش.
Welcome back. The agriculture sector in Yemen is facing serious challenges that curtails its ability to develop or even reach sufficiency. Adding to these challenges, there are rotten seeds that threaten the production. This report has more details.
Farmers in Ma'rib Governorate encounter a slew of issues during each agricultural season, including the high cost of seeds and the difficulty in obtaining them. However, farmers this year were faced with a new challenge: farming the field with sterile seeds. Farmers alleged that they had received bad seeds, which resulted in financial losses due to the expenditures of replowing the land and purchasing new seeds.
An organization sent us these seeds. Unfortunately, the harvesting season yielded very fragile plants that perished within a month or two. This caused us to sustain some severe losses.
The global food crisis prompted dozens of farmers in Ma'rib Governorate to expand wheat cultivation, with the aim of self-sufficiency and in anticipation of the prolongation of the global food crisis. Most of the farmers got wheat and potato seeds as support from some organizations. However, farmers state that the seeds they received were unable to yield crops. Farmers claim that the issue with seeds this season is complicated and stems from a number of factors, including seasonal changes, climatic instability, and the introduction of new insects through the use of seeds from other governorates.
This invasive pests that affect wheat crops also affect other crops like corn and barley.
As a result of the conflict, the interruption of salaries, the increase in displacement, and the growth in the unemployment rate, thousands of individuals, especially the displaced, resorted to agriculture, relying on it as their primary source of income, seeing as Ma'rib grows a variety of fruits, vegetables, and grains. With each setback that the farmers face, productivity falls and farmers are frustrated at the end of the season, with the Agriculture Office in Ma'rib unable to compensate for their losses.
As winter comes in, many people in Yemen do not have enough money to buy winter clothes. The war and the weak economy have a devastating impact on the population. More details are in the following report.
In conjunction with the approaching of the winter season and as the temperature is getting lower, people began to look for heavy and warm clothes to wear. Some of the poor families wear used clothes sold in the market, which the salespeople bring from unknown places. Unhealthy clothes, and most of the citizens suffer from itching as a result of wearing them.
The weather is severely cold and we cannot afford buying new clothes. The second-hand winter clothes that are sold in the streets from several countries, and they are cheap for people with limited income as a result of war conditions, but they cause skin diseases. There are second-hand coats in the market. We do not know anything about their origin and whether they cause skin diseases because we fear for our children. Yesterday morning, 3 children died at the same time as a result of the cold.
Many displaced families are unable to deal with the growing frustration of protracted displacement. The ongoing conflict has caused household savings to decline and healthcare services have stopped.
Displaced people in tents and huts are dying from severe cold. Another problem is the lack of food, medicine and winter clothes. We appeal to international organizations to help people in this camp.
In Al Safia camp, children are sick from the cold and we cannot keep them warm or even set a fire. All we can do is cover them with plastic sheets. We cannot buy clothes and food is unavailable.
3 million displaced people need humanitarian aid. This crisis in Yemen has affected children more than any group.
A joint cooperation agreement was signed in the UAE capital, Abu Dhabi, between the Ministry of Electricity and Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company to establish a solar power generation plant in Aden. The agreement provides for the establishment of a solar-powered plant with a capacity of 120 megawatts per hour. Transmission lines and conversion stations distribute eco-friendly energy. Minister of Oil gave direction to increase Hadramaut's allocation of domestic gas during the coming period. This comes in line with the increasing population density in the governorate and its hosting of many displaced families from other governorates. He said that studies have been completed for the strategic project related to the establishment of a gas unit with a production capacity of 1,000 tons of gas to cover the local market in Hadramaut and other governorates. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. A massive fire erupts in displaced camps in Hodeidah and causes serious damage. An Omani delegation arrives in Sana'a to discuss with the Houthis ways to revive the truce. Houthi militia imposes extra restrictions on women in the areas under their control. This is the end of the news. It was Rushan Fuad. See you soon.